Most people are taught one rule about money: work hard, earn money, repeat forever. From childhood, the formula is simple: study to get a job, work to get paid, spend to survive, then repeat the cycle again tomorrow. But according to the mindset often associated with thinkers like Niccolo Machiavelli, the people who truly gain power over money follow a very different rule. They do not work for money. They make money work for them. At first, this idea sounds confusing because everyone needs money to survive. So how can someone stop working for it? The answer lies in understanding the difference between labor and leverage. Most people exchange time for money. 1 hour of work equals one payment. If they stop working, the money stops. This system creates dependence. Your income depends entirely on your time, but time is limited. There are only 24 hours in a day, which means income also becomes limited. The powerful individuals Machiavelli observed understood something different. Instead of selling time, they built systems that produced value even when they were not present. Businesses, assets, influence, structures that continue generating wealth. This difference is subtle but powerful. One person works for money. Another person builds something that produces money, and the gap between those two paths grows larger over time. Now consider something important. Working for money is not the real problem. Everyone begins there. The real trap appears when someone never leaves that stage. They spend their entire life exchanging time for income, 40 years of labor, constant dependence on salary, constant pressure to maintain employment. This cycle keeps people busy but rarely creates freedom. Machiavellian thinking focuses on control. Control of resources, control of influence, control of systems. If your income depends on someone else's decision, control does not belong to you. It belongs to the person paying you. This is why many powerful individuals think differently about work. They do not reject work. They redirect it. Instead of working only for immediate income, they work to build something larger, a structure that produces value repeatedly. Imagine two individuals starting their careers. The first person focuses only on earning salary. Each month, they receive payment. Each month, they spend it. If they stop working, the money disappears. The second person also works, but part of their effort goes into building something: a skill, a business, an asset, something that grows over time. At first, both individuals appear similar. Both are working. Both are earning. But 10 years later, the difference becomes obvious. The first person is still exchanging time for money. The second person owns something that produces money. This shift from labor to leverage is the beginning of financial power. But most people never make that shift. Why? Because working for money creates immediate reward. You work today, you get paid soon. Building systems takes longer. Effort comes first. Reward arrives later. And many people lack the patience required for delayed reward. But Machiavellian thinkers understood something important about patience. Power grows slowly, and those who understand this timeline eventually control the systems others depend on. Now consider the psychology behind this. When people rely entirely on salary, they feel safe. Regular income, predictable structure, clear routine. But safety often hides a deeper vulnerability: dependence. If someone else controls your income, they control your stability, your lifestyle, your future. This is why many people feel constant anxiety about work. They must protect their position, avoid mistakes, maintain approval. Because losing the job means losing income. But those who build systems create a different relationship with money. Their income comes from multiple sources: assets, investments, ownership. This diversification reduces dependence, and reducing dependence increases freedom. Now imagine the emotional difference between these two situations. One person wakes up every morning needing permission to earn. Another person wakes up knowing their systems continue operating. The second person still works, but their work is strategic, focused on expansion rather than survival. This is the first secret hidden in Machiavellian thinking about money. Do not spend your entire life working only for income. Spend your effort building structures that generate income. Because once money begins working for you instead of the other way around, something important happens. Your relationship with work changes. Work stops feeling like survival. It becomes creation. Creation of systems, creation of influence, creation of assets that grow beyond your time. And that shift is where real financial power begins. One of the most important differences between ordinary earners and financially powerful individuals is not intelligence, it is perspective. Most people see money as the goal, but thinkers influenced by the mindset of Niccolo Machiavelli see money as a tool. And tools are meant to be used strategically. If someone spends their entire life chasing money, they remain controlled by it. But if someone learns how money moves, grows, and multiplies, they begin controlling it. This difference may seem small, but it completely changes the game. Most people ask one question about money: how can I earn more? But powerful thinkers ask a different question: how can I position myself where money naturally flows? The first question leads to labor. The second question leads to strategy. Now consider how money actually moves in society. Money flows toward value, but value is not always created through physical effort. Often it is created through systems, ideas, structures, influence. Machiavelli observed that rulers rarely produced resources themselves. They controlled the systems that produced them. They controlled land, trade routes, taxes, all structures that generated wealth continuously. The lesson behind this observation is simple. Ownership creates leverage. If you only work inside a system, your power remains limited. But if you control part of the system, your influence increases dramatically. This is why powerful individuals focus heavily on ownership. Ownership of businesses, ownership of assets, ownership of intellectual property. Ownership creates something that labor alone cannot provide: control. Imagine two people again. One works inside a company. The other owns a small portion of that company. Both may work hard, but the owner benefits from the entire system. Every employee contributes to the growth of that structure. The worker contributes only through their individual effort. This difference compounds over time because systems grow faster than individual labor. Now consider another important insight. Money follows attention. Where people place their attention, value often appears. Businesses understand this deeply. If millions of people focus on a product, that product becomes valuable. If millions of people focus on a platform, that platform becomes powerful. This is why modern financial influence often follows visibility. The more attention someone controls, the more opportunities they attract. Machiavellian thinkers understand this principle. Instead of chasing money directly, they built influence. Because influence attracts money naturally. Influence can take many forms: expertise, reputation, network, audience, all forms of attention that create opportunities, and opportunities often generate wealth. Now imagine someone who spends years developing expertise in a valuable field. Over time, their knowledge grows, their reputation grows. Eventually, people begin seeking their advice, their insights, their leadership. At that point, money no longer needs to be chased aggressively. It arrives through opportunity. This is why powerful individuals often invest heavily in learning and positioning. Not just working harder, but working smarter. Because knowledge creates leverage. The more specialized your understanding becomes, the more valuable your time becomes. But Machiavelli also understood another uncomfortable truth. Many people remain trapped in the labor cycle because they prioritize comfort over strategy. They prefer predictable routines, stable environments, clear instructions. Strategic thinking requires something different: risk, patience, long-term planning. These qualities are uncomfortable at first because results may take time, but those who tolerate this discomfort eventually gain advantages that others cannot easily replicate. Now imagine spending 5 years building a skill or system. At first, progress feels slow, but eventually, momentum appears. Clients arrive, customers grow, assets accumulate, and suddenly the system begins generating income beyond your daily effort. At that moment, the dynamic changes completely. You are no longer trading hours for survival. Your systems begin working alongside you. This does not eliminate work, but it transforms its nature. Work becomes strategic rather than purely laborious. Instead of asking, "How many hours must I work today?" you begin asking, "What system can I improve today? What asset can I build today? What opportunity can I position myself for today?" These questions move you away from survival thinking and towards strategic thinking. Machiavelli believed that power belongs to those who understand systems, because systems determine how resources move. If you understand the system, you can position yourself advantageously. If you do not, you remain dependent on those who do. This is why many wealthy individuals focus less on working harder and more on building structures. Structures that scale, structures that grow, structures that continue operating even when they step away temporarily. Now consider the emotional difference between these two approaches to money. Someone who relies entirely on salary often feels pressure constantly. They must maintain performance, maintain approval, maintain employment. But someone who owns systems experiences a different type of pressure. Strategic pressure. They focus on improving the structure rather than protecting a single income source. This mindset creates resilience because income becomes diversified and diversification reduces vulnerability. This is the second secret hidden in Machiavellian thinking about money. Do not chase money endlessly. Understand how money moves. Understand how value grows. And position yourself where value flows naturally. Because when you control systems instead of just labor, money stops being something you chase. It becomes something your structures attract. One of the most misunderstood ideas about money is the belief that working harder automatically leads to wealth. This belief is deeply rooted in society. People are taught from childhood that effort alone determines success. Work longer hours, work with more intensity, work without stopping, and eventually, money will follow. But the reality of financial power is far more complicated. Hard work is important, but hard work without strategy rarely creates control. Niccolò Machiavelli observed that the individuals who gained the most influence were not always the ones working the hardest. They were the ones positioned closest to the systems producing value. Position matters. Imagine two people exerting equal effort. One spends years performing repetitive tasks. The other spends the same years building something that can grow. The difference is not effort. It is direction. Effort applied in the wrong place produces exhaustion. Effort applied strategically produces leverage. Leverage is what transforms labor into power. Leverage means your actions create results larger than the effort invested. A worker may complete one task and receive one payment, but someone who builds a system may create something that generates value repeatedly. For example, imagine someone who writes a book. The effort happens once, but the book can be sold thousands of times. Or imagine someone who builds a business system. Employees, processes, and customers begin interacting with that system daily. Value continues flowing even when the founder steps away temporarily. This is the difference between labor and leverage. Labor requires constant presence. Leverage multiplies results beyond individual effort. Now consider why many people remain trapped in pure labor. The reason is immediate reward. Working for salary produces quick feedback. You worked this week, you receive payment soon. Building systems requires patience, sometimes months, sometimes years. During that time, progress may appear slow, and many people abandon the process before momentum appears. But Machiavellian thinking focuses heavily on long-term positioning. Those who understand systems think years ahead rather than weeks. They ask different questions, not just how to earn money today, but how to build something that produces money tomorrow and next year and 10 years from now. This long-term thinking creates a powerful advantage because most people focus only on immediate survival. Few focus on strategic construction. Now imagine two individuals starting their financial journey. The first person spends every hour trying to maximize short-term income, more shifts, more overtime, more immediate payments. The second person also works, but dedicates part of their effort toward building an asset, learning a valuable skill, starting a small business, creating intellectual property. At first, the first person appears more successful. Their income arrives faster, their progress looks immediate. But 10 years later, the situation may look completely different. The first person is still exchanging time for income. The second person now owns something that produces value. This transformation happens slowly, almost invisibly. But once leverage appears, growth accelerates. Now consider another factor Machiavelli understood clearly. Control over resources often matters more than effort. Imagine someone who owns land. Others work on that land. Crops grow. Value appears. The owner benefits from the system itself, not only from individual labor. This principle appears everywhere in modern economies. Ownership of businesses, ownership of technology, ownership of intellectual property, Ownership creates financial power because it connects you to a system, and systems multiply value. Now think about how intelligent individuals approach effort differently. They still work hard, but they constantly evaluate whether their effort produces leverage. If effort only produces short-term payment, they begin searching for ways to transform it. They ask themselves, can this skill become a service? Can this service become a system? Can this system operate without my constant presence? These questions push effort toward scalability, and scalability is where financial power grows. But this transformation requires a change in mindset. Instead of thinking only about working harder, you begin thinking about working differently. You become curious about how systems operate, how value flows, how resources move, and where opportunities exist within those structures. Machiavelli believed that people who understand systems eventually gain influence over them. Because systems are predictable, they follow patterns, supply and demand, attention and value, ownership and control. When you recognize these patterns, you begin positioning yourself strategically. Instead of being controlled by the system, you begin navigating it intelligently. Now imagine reaching a point where your income no longer depends entirely on your daily effort, where assets contribute, where systems contribute, where investments contribute. At that moment, something powerful happens. Time becomes more flexible. You are no longer forced to work constantly for survival. Instead, you can choose where to focus your effort. This freedom is the real objective behind Machiavellian thinking about money. Not luxury, not display. Control. Control over resources, control over time, control over decisions. And control begins the moment you stop viewing work only as labor and start viewing it as a tool for building systems. Because once systems begin working alongside you, money stops being something you chase every day. It becomes something your structures produce. One of the most important ideas associated with the strategic thinking of Niccolò Machiavelli is simple but powerful. Control the system, not the salary. A salary is limited. It comes from a single source. It depends on someone else's approval, and it stops the moment your work stops. But systems operate differently. A system can continue functioning even when you step away temporarily, and the person who controls the system controls the flow of resources. Machiavelli observed this dynamic in politics and power. Rulers did not personally produce all wealth. They positioned themselves where wealth flowed: trade routes, land, tax systems, political influence. They controlled the structures through which resources moved. The lesson hidden in this observation is not political, it is strategic. Those who control systems shape outcomes. Those who operate inside systems follow outcomes. Now consider how this applies to money today. Most people build their financial life around a single channel of income: their job. Every bill, every expense, every plan depends on that one source. This creates fragility. If that source disappears, everything collapses. But individuals who understand systems approach money differently. They build multiple channels of value: a skill that produces income, an asset that appreciates over time, an investment that generates returns. Each piece becomes part of a larger structure. Over time, this structure grows stronger. Now imagine two financial structures. The first person depends entirely on a paycheck. The second person has several small income streams: a business, an investment, a service. If the first person loses their job, income disappears completely. But if one stream disappears for the second person, the others remain. This resilience creates stability, and stability creates freedom. Machiavellian thinkers focus heavily on resilience because power requires stability. If your financial life can collapse easily, your decisions become restricted. You must accept conditions you dislike. You must avoid risk. You must protect your single source of income constantly. But diversified systems change that dynamic. When multiple structures generate value, you gain flexibility. Flexibility increases independence. Independence increases power. Now consider another factor Machiavelli understood deeply. Influence attracts resources. People with influence rarely chase money aggressively. Opportunities arrive naturally. Partnerships appear, investments appear, new projects appear. Influence creates gravitational pull. But influence does not appear randomly. It grows from value, expertise, reputation, trust. When people recognize your competence in a specific area, they begin associating value with your presence. And value attracts opportunity. This is why many successful individuals focus heavily on positioning. They choose fields where their knowledge can grow valuable. They invest years developing expertise. Over time, their position strengthens. And once their position becomes strong, financial opportunities expand naturally. This approach requires patience because influence grows slowly. But when influence finally reaches critical mass, the results become powerful. Money begins flowing toward the person rather than the person chasing money. Now imagine someone spending years building expertise in a specialized field. At first, progress appears slow. Few people notice. Few opportunities appear, but gradually their reputation grows. More people recognize their knowledge. More people trust their judgment. Eventually, their influence creates leverage. They are invited to collaborate, to consult, to lead projects. At that point, their income expands beyond simple labor, because their value now exists within a larger system of trust and recognition. Machiavelli understood that reputation is a form of currency. A strong reputation multiplies opportunities. A weak reputation limits them. This is why powerful individuals protect their credibility carefully, because credibility determines how much influence their decisions carry. Now consider the psychological difference between chasing money and controlling systems. Someone chasing money constantly searches for the next payment, the next opportunity, the next transaction, but someone controlling systems focuses on building structures that produce value consistently. Their attention moves away from survival and toward growth. Instead of asking how to earn more this month, they ask how to strengthen the structure itself, how to improve processes, how to expand reach, how to increase value delivered. These improvements compound over time. Small adjustments today produce larger outcomes tomorrow, and once a system begins expanding, growth accelerates. Now imagine reaching a point where your income is not tied to a single action, where assets operate quietly in the background, where systems generate value continuously. At that moment, your relationship with work changes completely. You still work, but you work strategically. Your effort focuses on improving systems rather than simply surviving inside them, and that shift creates something powerful. Financial control, control over time, control over opportunity, control over direction. This is the fourth lesson hidden in Machiavellian thinking about money. Do not focus only on earning income. Focus on controlling structures that generate income, because once you control systems instead of salaries, money becomes a consequence of positioning rather than constant effort. When people hear the phrase, "don't work for money," they often misunderstand it. It does not mean refusing to work, and it does not mean ignoring financial reality. Instead, it points toward a deeper shift in thinking, a shift that thinkers like Niccolo Machiavelli would recognize immediately. Work should build power, not just income. Income disappears quickly. Bills arrive, expenses rise, and the cycle begins again. But power grows when work creates leverage. Leverage is what allows effort to multiply, and multiplication is what creates long-term wealth. Now imagine two individuals again. Both wake up early. Both work hard. Both sacrifice time and energy. But one person spends their life chasing payment. The other spends their life building systems. At first, the difference is invisible. But over time, the gap grows. Because systems accumulate, and accumulated structures eventually become stronger than individual effort. This is why many powerful individuals focus less on immediate money and more on assets. Assets produce value repeatedly. Businesses generate revenue continuously. Investments grow over time. Intellectual property can produce income for decades. These structures change the entire financial equation. Instead of earning once and spending once, value circulates. Money flows repeatedly through the same system. Now consider something Machiavelli understood deeply. True power is not measured by wealth alone. It is measured by control. Control over resources. Control over time. Control over decisions. Someone may earn a high salary yet remain trapped. Their schedule belongs to someone else. Their income depends on approval. Their time disappears inside obligations. But someone who builds systems gradually regains control because systems create options. Options create freedom. Freedom creates influence. Now imagine waking up without financial panic. Your systems operate quietly. Your assets produce value. Your investments grow. You still work, but the nature of that work has changed. You are no longer forced to trade time for survival. You are free to direct your effort toward growth, creativity, strategy. This is the hidden goal behind the philosophy of not working for money. It is not laziness, it is independence. Independence from constant dependence on salary. Independence from the fear of losing income overnight. Independence from the endless cycle of survival thinking. But reaching this point requires patience. It requires long-term thinking. Because systems rarely appear instantly, they must be built carefully. Tested, improved, expanded. During the early stages, the effort may feel invisible. Progress may seem slow. Others may not understand what you are building, but Machiavellian thinkers always understood the value of strategic patience. Those who build structures today control outcomes tomorrow. Those who focus only on short-term income often remain trapped in the same cycle forever. Now imagine someone spending years learning how money truly moves. They study markets, systems, human behavior, value creation. They observe how influence attracts opportunity, how ownership multiplies income, how networks expand possibilities. Over time, this knowledge compounds, and eventually their actions become more effective. Not because they work harder, but because they understand the system. And once you understand the system, you stop fighting against it. You begin positioning yourself inside it, where value flows naturally. This is the final lesson hidden in Machiavellian thinking about money. Money itself is not the ultimate objective. Control is. Control over time, control over opportunity, control over your own direction. Because once you control your time, you control your life. And when you control your life, money becomes a tool rather than a master. The people who truly understand this secret do not spend their entire lives chasing money. They spend their effort building structures that attract it, quietly, strategically, patiently, until one day the system they built becomes stronger than the effort they invested. And at that moment, something remarkable happens. Money stops being something they must constantly pursue. It becomes something their systems produce. And that is the real meaning behind the phrase, do not work for money. Work to build something that makes money work for you.